Okay, let's just dive right in. You know that feeling, right? We've all had it. You put in just countless hours, maybe you're losing sleep, you practice perfectly, you feel like you've prepared absolutely everything down to the last
Yeah, I
detail.
ticked all the boxes.
Exactly. And then the moment arrives. The pressure hits. Could be a massive presentation at work. Maybe it's, I don't know, a final exam or the crucial point in a competition.
The make or break moment.
And you just fail. Your performance completely tanks. Sometimes it's like spectacularly bad.
It really is the ultimate paradox, isn't it? This whole performance thing. Because, like with total certainty deep down that you have the skills you need.
You've seen yourself do it.
Precisely. You have proof, empirical evidence from all that practice, all the preparation, that the ability is definitely there. But then, in that critical moment, the proficiency you were counting on just sort of evaporates.
Vanishes.
Yeah, it's gone. And it feels like more than just nerves. It's almost like a systemic failure, a disconnect.
That specific feeling, that frustration, maybe even a sense of being betrayed by your own skills, that's exactly what we're getting into in this deep dive today.
Mm-hmm.
We're focusing on just one source, but it's incredibly insightful. It gives us this really clear framework for understanding this huge problem it lays out. Skill set versus mindset.
Right. And our mission here really is to get super precise about separating these two things, but also understanding how they work together.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to unpack that tight connection, that correlation the source talks about between skill set and mindset.
Okay.
We need to define really clearly what the skill set actually is, all the technical stuff, and then what is the mindset. And maybe most importantly, we're going to try and reveal the specific mechanism, the thing that actually messes up performance.
The corrupting mechanism.
Exactly. The thing that can derail even the absolute experts, people who've spent their whole lives mastering the technical side of things.
And here's the big idea, the central argument that this source puts forward. When you fail in those high-pressure moments, it's often not really a technical failure at its root.
Right. It feels technical, but maybe it isn't.
Yeah. The failure happens because your mental environment gets corrupted somehow. And that corrected state acts like this, I don't know, this solid barrier, basically stopping you from accessing the very skills you've spent maybe years building up.
That's a powerful image.
It's like you show up for the big race with this incredible high-performance car, everything tuned perfectly, but just as you go to start it, you find the ignition key is just gone.
Right. The engine's perfect, the fuel's there, but you can't turn it on.
Exactly. The skills are definitely there inside you, but the system that runs them, the mindset, it's just refusing to boot up properly.
So the source kicks off by tackling that question head on, that really common, super frustrating question. Why do we sometimes perform so badly, even when we felt incredibly well prepared?
Yeah, why does that happen?
The author uses cricket as the main example field, which is quite useful, actually. They talk about players who do everything right in preparation. They train brilliantly, they eat the right food the night before, get enough sleep, follow all the routines.
They control all the controllables, as they say.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And yet when the actual game starts, they produce, quote, no runs or wickets, just nothing. Failure.
It's easy to just write that off, isn't it? Just say, oh, they choked or they just panicked under pressure.
Right. We tend to label it quickly. But this framework, this skill set versus mindset idea, it really pushes for a deeper look. If the physical prep is spot on, if the technical side is flawless, if that muscle memory is truly embedded and the knowledge is there,
then success should logically flow, right?
it should. The fact
Yeah.
that it often doesn't, well, that points to something else entirely, something separate from just physical or technical ability. And the source uses this one anecdote, this story, that just perfectly captures how bizarre this whole paradox is.
Ah, yes, the leg spinner anecdote. This is the core example, isn't it?
It really is. It's about a great cricketer. So, a good club-level player who actually played indoor cricket for Australia.
Okay, so definitely not a beginner. We're talking about someone operating at a pretty high level here. This isn't just casual park cricket skill. This is someone with serious honed expertise.
Absolutely. And the way the author describes his skill set in practice, in the nets, it's genuinely incredible. He calls him an absolute genius watching him practice.
A genius. Wow.
Yeah, and for anyone listening who doesn't follow cricket much, a leg spinner is probably the hardest, most complex type of bowler there is. It's incredibly demanding, technically and mentally. They rely on spinning the ball, deceiving the batter, extreme accuracy.
It's not just throwing it straight and fast. It's about making the ball do clever things, right? Using your wrists and fingers in really complex ways.
Exactly right. It requires immense control over the ball's rotation, its flight path, everything. And the source details how, in the nets, this guy could land everything perfectly.
Everything. Like what?
Well, the standard delivery, the leggy, which spins away from a right-handed batter. Then the wrong un, or googly, that's the really deceptive one that looks like a leggy but spins the other way into the batter. That takes incredible calibration, physically and mentally.
Okay, that sounds tough.
Oh, it is. And also sliders, faster balls that don't really spin but just skeet on straight. So he had this whole arsenal, this amazing variety and control. The author even says this bowler could rip them past his own bat, Jace, the author's bat, almost every time in practice.
So, in the nets, under no real pressure, he's displaying world-class skill, undeniable technical mastery. Skill set, A+, right?
Textbook A+. Perfect adaptable skill set. The timing, the wrist action, the finger spin, the muscle memory, the hand-eye coordination, it was all there, clearly honed over many, many years.
Okay, so that's the setup. He's got the goods in practice. What happens then when he leaves the controlled environment of the nest and steps onto the field for an actual competitive game?
Well, that's where the paradox hits hard. The wheels just completely come off. He struggled massively.
How badly?
The source gives these really quite painful, specific examples. He'd bowl full tosses, which is when the ball doesn't bounce and just arrives high and easy for the batter, like a gift, really.
Oh, dear. That's basic stuff going wrong.
It is. And even worse, the dreaded double bouncer, where the ball literally bounces twice before it even reaches the batter. Just embarrassing for a bowler of his level.
Wow.
Yeah. He'd only managed to bowl his actual good deliveries, the ones he nailed in the nets, just occasionally. Most of it was,
Yeah.
well, a mess.
That difference is just staggering. It's not like a slight dip in form, is it? That's a fundamental inability to execute the basics, let alone the complex stuff he mastered just hours or days before.
Exactly. It tells
Yeah.
you something crucial. The physical ability, the muscle memory to bowl that perfect wrong un, it didn't just vanish overnight.
No, it couldn't have.
So something else must have been preventing him from even starting the process correctly, blocking access to it.
And the really telling part.
The really telling part is what the author notes next.
Mm-hmm.
The bowler would go back to the nets the following week, and like magic, the skills were back.
Just like that.
Just like that. He could deliver all those complex variations, the leggy, the wrong un, the slider, flawlessly again, in the nets.
So it's this cycle. Genius in practice, struggles in the game, back to genius in practice.
Exactly. And this repeating pattern, this cycle of competence and incompetence,
Mm.
it forces you to really think about the root cause, doesn't it? It leads the author to ask this fundamental question, the one that really underpins this whole skill set mindset framework. I wonder what's going on with him. How can he be so good in the nets but struggle so much in the games?
That question is key because it shifts the focus, doesn't it? It moves away from, does he have the skill? Because clearly he does.
Undeniably.
And moves towards, why can't he use the skill when it matters? It points towards something psychological, something about accessing the skill.
Precisely. And the conclusion the source draws from this anecdote is absolutely definitive. It sets up everything else we need to discuss. The author concludes, obviously the problem lay in his mind, as he definitely had the skills.
Definitely had the skills. That phrase really resonates.
It's the linchpin. If the skills are demonstrably there, if they can be reliably reproduced in a low-pressure setting like the nets, then the failure to access them when the pressure ramps up must be down to some kind of psychological barrier.
So we're not looking at a lack of competence. We're looking at a lack of access to competence.
That's a great way to phrase it. It's an accessibility issue, which forces us then to try and define this mental infrastructure, this internal environment that either allows or prevents these deeply learned abilities from firing when we actually need them most.
You know, I think the challenge for so many people listening, whether they're, I don't know, trying to close a deal or play a piece of music perfectly or code under a deadline, is that we tend to just throw all these failures into one big bucket labeled, I choked or I panicked.
It's a catch-all term.
Yeah, but this framework demands more precision. It forces us to separate the two key elements. There's the skill itself, the thing you learned, and then there's the mental environment that skill needs to actually operate effectively. They're different things.
They are, and understanding that difference is the first step to solving the paradox.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that paradox, that leg spinner story, proves the problem often isn't the skill itself, then we really need to nail down what the source means by skill set. And the definition it gives is quite broad, actually. It covers the whole technical foundation that someone builds up.
Right. So skill set is basically everything you learn and develop through sheer hard work, through practice, through repetition. It's the tangible outcome of putting in the time and the focused effort.
Exactly. And the source lists specific components, things like hand-eye coordination, memory, both factual recall and muscle memory. I'd assume timing skills, visual processing skills, and even just the basic ability to focus your attention.
These are the building blocks of competence in almost any field, aren't they?
They really are. Think about how you actually acquire competence. In any complex activity surgery, writing code, playing an instrument, negotiating a contract, you're learning specific technical skills, right? You're embedding knowledge, facts, information in your memory. And crucially, you're developing that muscle memory through doing it over and over and over again.
That automation process, making complex actions feel automatic so you don't have to consciously think through every single step each time.
That's it exactly. It's about moving the execution from conscious control to subconscious automated pathways. And that takes time. Long periods of repetition, the source emphasizes.
Let's just maybe pick one of those components to illustrate how broad this skill set idea is, like visual processing skills.
Okay, good one.
In cricket, like in the source, that obviously means tracking a small, hard ball, traveling at high speed, calculating its bounce and trajectory in fractions of a second. Super demanding.
Yeah.
But, in a business context, visual processing skills might be how quickly and accurately a financial analyst can scan a dense spreadsheet, looking for anomalies or trends among hundreds of data points.
Or how a doctor interprets an X-ray or an MRI scan, picking out subtle but crucial details.
Right. It's that ability, developed through practice and experience, to filter information, track patterns, and react appropriately to complex visual input. That developed expertise is the skill set.
Precisely. So the skill set is like your specialized toolkit, your finely tuned hardware. It's been tested, it's been calibrated in practice, it's proven to be capable under certain conditions.
And this is the critical point the source makes, isn't it? The skill set is explicitly separate from the mindset.
Yes. Very, very clearly distinct. They're not the same thing at all. They absolutely depend on each other. They're linked, but they were separate components of performance.
Okay, so if skill set is the hardware, the tools, what then, according to the source, is the mindset?
This brings us right to the core definition of that second term. The source defines mindset as the mental environment in which our skills are expressed.
The mental environment. I like that phrasing.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
It suggests it's not really a skill in the same way, not something you train like learning scales on a piano. It's more like the atmospheric conditions inside your head, the operational state, the overall health of your mind at the moment you need to perform.
Okay, so if skill set is the hardware, the powerful processors, the big memory banks, the perfectly engineered physical parts, then the mindset is kind of like the operating system maybe, and also the climate control.
That's a fantastic analogy.
Yeah.
The hardware, the skill set might be absolutely top of the line, flawless even. But if the operating system, the mindset is full of bugs, if it's crashing, or if the internal temperature, the emotional state gets way too high,
then the hardware just can't execute properly. It fails.
That's exactly the connection, the correlation the source is highlighting. It says two are tightly correlated. Yeah. You absolutely cannot maximize your performance by just focusing on one and ignoring the other.
You need both working well.
You need both. The ultimate goal, the source suggests, is understanding how you combine that technical proficiency, your deeply ingrained skill set, with creating the correct mental environment for yourself. Because, as the leg spinner showed, you can have the best hardware in the world. But if that mental environment is corrupted, if it's filled with fear, anxiety, doubt, distraction, you fall right back into that paradox. Failure despite preparation.
It also suggests maybe that the moment we shift our focus away from just grinding harder on the skill itself and start thinking about how to actively manage and nurture the environment, maybe that's when we get closer to actually solving this performance puzzle for ourselves. The leg spinner didn't need more practice in the nets, did he? He had the skill down pat there. He needed a different internal climate when he walked out to the middle.
That's exactly right. And this is so relevant for anyone listening who's constantly trying to learn new things, acquire new knowledge or information.
Yeah. How so?
Well, think about it. You can spend ages, weeks maybe, embedding complex information, building up your technical knowledge base for, say, a presentation or an exam. Your skill set in terms of knowledge is solid. But then when you actually try to apply it under pressure, under a deadline,
It feels like you can't quite get to it, like it's stuck.
exactly, it feels blocked. Your ability to retrieve that information, to use it fluidly, just seems hampered. And the insight here is that the problem probably isn't that you didn't learn it well enough. The skill set is there. The problem is likely a psychological barrier, a corrupted mindset that's stopping that retrieval pathway from working smoothly.
Wow. So the mindset is like the gatekeeper for the skill set.
In a very real sense, yes. Which leads us perfectly into the next section. What exactly happens when that gatekeeper slams the door shut? What is this corruption mechanism, and why are things like fear and premeditation so damaging?
Mm.
Okay, this part really gets to the heart of the source's findings. It explains the core mechanism of failure, and honestly, this is crucial for understanding performance breakdowns in pretty much any challenging situation. The central idea is starkly simple. If the mindset that mental environment is incorrect or becomes corrupted,
Then what happens?
then the ability to actually access all those skills you've painstakingly developed is significantly reduced.
Significantly reduced, not just a little bit off.
No. And the source goes further. It emphasizes that this reduction can get so bad that the person literally cannot access those skills at crucial moments in time.
Wow. That's quite extreme. It's like being a highly trained surgeon, poised to make that critical, precise incision, and suddenly your hand just freezes.
Or shakes uncontrollably. Exactly. The skill, the knowledge, the physical capability is absolutely present in your body and brain, but it's become unreachable because your conscious mind is just flooding the system with panic or doubt or fear.
The gateway is locked tight.
Locked tight. And to really help us grasp how profound this corruption can be, the author shares a really personal and quite vivid experience from their own career back in 2015. It was about facing very fast bowling in cricket.
Okay, a high-pressure, high-stakes scenario.
Yeah, definitely. And this personal story is great because it lets us see the specific ingredients of an ideal mental environment, the one that allows access, directly contrasted with the elements of the corrupted one that blocks access.
All right, so let's start with the ideal. What did that look like for the author when they were performing at their absolute best against fast bowlers?
When the author was at their best, they described the mental environment as being very positive and also aggressive.
Aggressive? In what way? Like angry?
No, not hostile aggressive,
Yep.
more like aggressively ready, proactive, switched on. Designed, as the author puts it, to react as quickly and instinctively as possible to the ball coming down at maybe 90 miles an hour.
Okay, so alert, positive, ready to react instantly.
Yes. But here's the absolute key characteristic, the defining feature of that ideal state.
Mm-hmm.
There was, quote, no premeditation at all.
No premeditation. What does that mean exactly in this context?
It means not deciding beforehand what shot you're going to play, not thinking, okay, if he bowls it short, I'm definitely going to pull, or if it's full, I'll drive. None of that conscious planning before the event happens.
So what was there instead?
Only, and this is crucial, complete trust in instincts to just execute whatever shot was necessary in that split second.
Trusting the automation.
Exactly. This is so vital for high-level performance. As we said, when you train something for years, the actual execution of the skill moves from the slow, analytical, conscious part of your brain.
The prefrontal cortex.
Right. Into the faster, instinctual, almost reflexive areas. Your muscle memory, your automated pathways. That's where skills need to live for high-speed execution.
So the ideal performance state is when the skill just fires instantly, automatically, bypassing that conscious analytical filter entirely.
That's the zone, right? That's flow. The moment your conscious mind tries to jump in, tries to analyze, tries to predict, tries to control, that's when you run into trouble.
Why? Why is the conscious mind getting involved so bad?
Well, think about it from a sort of neural processing speed perspective. The conscious verbal reasoning part of the brain is just inherently much slower than those highly optimized instinctual motor reflex pathways.
Okay.
So when you premeditate, when you consciously analyze the situation and decide, right, I'm going to play this specific shot, before you've even fully processed the actual sensory input, like where the ball is actually going.
You're basically forcing the slow system to override the fast system?
Exactly. You're putting your conscious brain in charge of something that needs to happen much faster than your conscious brain can operate. That conscious override introduces this tiny but critical delay, a micro delay in execution timing.
And in something like facing fast bowling or any high-speed activity, a micro delay is catastrophic.
It's the difference between hitting the ball cleanly and missing it completely, or getting hit. It translates directly to mistimed execution and failure.
Okay, so that's the ideal. Positive, aggressive readiness, no premeditation, just pure trust in instinct and automation. What happened in 2015? What corrupted that ideal state for the author?
According to the source, it was a toxic combination, really, a duo of classic performance killers, fear and premeditation.
Ah, the culprits.
Yes. The author says explicitly they became fearful of the ball coming down. Maybe a fear of getting hurt, maybe just fear of failure, of getting out. And crucially, alongside that fear, they started premeditating, specifically thinking ahead, predicting, deciding that the ball was going to be short before it was even bowled.
So instead of reacting to what was actually happening, they were reacting to a prediction, a guess, and probably a fear-driven guess at that.
That's exactly it. Reacting to a potential negative outcome that existed only in their head, not yet in reality, which of course is often wrong. The bowler might bowl it full.
Right. And the source calls this corrupted state, fear plus premeditation, the absolute opposite of the mental environment that you want to have to access all of your technical skills. That's pretty damning.
It is, because when the author allowed that positive, instinctual trust to be replaced by fear and conscious prediction, the impact was immediate and severe. Their performances, quote, tanked in a big way.
And the crucial point again, they hadn't suddenly forgotten how to bat overnight, right? The skills hadn't disappeared.
No, absolutely not. The author is clear. The skills were still deep inside of me from all of the hours that I had spent refining my technique. The muscle memory, the coordination, it was all still there. But the fear and the premeditation acted like a complete mental barrier, a firewall, preventing access to those deeply ingrained skills.
This is such a key insight for anyone listening, I think.
Yeah.
Your years of hard work, your training, your knowledge, it can effectively be locked away, inaccessible, behind a mental wall that you build with anxiety and conscious overthinking or trying to predict the future.
It really is. Think about it in another context. Say you're a sales leader and you've meticulously prepared for a really difficult negotiation. You've rehearsed your points, anticipated objections. That's your skill set, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ideal mental environment for that negotiation would be being totally present in the room, actively listening, reading the client's body language, their micro-expressions, and then reacting instinctively, flexibly, using your practice repertoire of responses. No rigid premeditation of how it must go.
Okay.
But if you walk into that room feeling fearful, maybe intimidated, and you're premeditating, you're convinced the client is going to bring up this one specific, really awkward point. What happens?
You spend all your mental energy waiting for that shoe to drop, bracing for it.
Exactly. You're focusing on that feared prediction instead of actually listening to what the client is saying and engaging with the reality of the conversation. Then, if the conversation takes an unexpected turn, you might freeze up or respond awkwardly because your conscious mind was too busy analyzing a threat that maybe never even materialized. Your skill set wasn't accessible because your mindset was hijacked by prediction.
And then, once you make that first little error, maybe you mistime a response in the negotiation or mishit that first ball in cricket, the situation can get even worse, can it? Because of negative self-talk.
Yes, the downward spiral. That's the third element of mindset corruption the source mentions. The author describes that horrible mental loop. After you make a mistake, mishit a ball you'd normally nail, you immediately start thinking, oh no, I've lost it. Or asking yourself, where is it gone? Why can't I do this anymore?
That internal critic just goes into overdrive.
Completely. And that negative self-talk, it just cements the corrupted mindset. You don't just feel the fear or the effects of bad premeditation anymore. You start actively questioning the very existence of your underlying ability.
Which probably makes you try even harder to control things consciously, right? To force it.
Precisely. Which leads to more analysis, more conscious interference, more premeditation, and therefore further breakdown of your natural automated execution. It becomes this vicious, self-fulfilling prophecy of failure, all triggered by that initial mindset corruption.
It sounds truly awful, insidious, really. But the source does offer some hope here, doesn't it? The author did find a way out of this slump.
Yes, absolutely. They mentioned that after learning about this framework, understanding this distinction between skill set and mindset and how they interact, they were able to get back to playing fast bowling, including the feared short ball, just as well as they ever had before.
Crucially, the skills didn't need to be relearned from scratch.
No, not at all. The skills were always there. What needed to happen was the recovery, the reopening of the mental gateway to those skills.
And how did they do that? What was the focus?
The recovery, according to the source, was entirely focused on understanding how to consciously pull the two components, skill set and mindset, together. It involved recognizing the need to actively create the right mental environment again.
So deliberately shifting the mindset back.
Yes, deliberately redirecting the internal state back towards positivity, that aggressive readiness, and most importantly, back towards trusting instinct again. The goal was essentially to dismantle that conscious barrier of fear and prediction and just allow the ingrained muscle memory, the skill set, to become instantly accessible and operational again.
That's a really powerful lesson in self-awareness and self-regulation, isn't it?
It really is. It suggests that the path to consistent peak performance isn't always about just adding more hours of practice, grinding harder on the technical skills.
Yeah.
Sometimes the biggest gains come from identifying what your ideal mental state feels like and then learning how to fiercely protect it from those internal invaders, the fear, the doubt, the urge to predict and control.
So this understanding that you need to manage the mindset to access the skill set leads us directly to this idea of balance, doesn't it? That peak performance isn't about maximizing just one thing. It's not skill set or mindset. It's the effective combination, the synthesis of both.
Exactly. The source is very clear on this. It states that for the absolute best version of yourself, the athlete, the performer, to show up consistently, you must combine being as technically sound and correct as possible with actively creating the right mental environment for yourself. They have to work together. They're a required tandem.
A required tandem, I like that. And we can actually use this framework now to look at the two main ways this tandem can break down, right? Because the source introduces a really important counterpoint to that first leg spinner story.
Yes, it does. It covers both scenarios.
So case one is the one we spent most time on so far. That's the spot-on technique, flawed mindset scenario.
Right. That's the leg spinner in the game. That's the author during that 2015 slump-facing fast bowling. In this case, the technical ability, the skill set, is described as absolutely spot on. It's there, it's perfect.
But if the mental environment, the mindset is not right, if it's corrupted by fear or premeditation or negativity.
Then the ability to actually execute those perfect technical skills is still significantly reduced. The flawed mindset directly compromises the expression of technical capability. That's the first way the tandem fails.
Okay, clear enough. Mindset failure undermines skill set access. But what about the flip side? What's case two?
Case two explores the opposite situation. What happens if your mindset is great, absolutely spot on, but there's actually an underlying flaw, maybe even a subtle one, in your technique, in your skill set?
You might instinctively think that a really strong mindset, that perfect zone of being positive, aggressive, trusting your instincts, could maybe compensate for minor technical weaknesses, couldn't it? Power through them.
That's what you might assume. But the source comes to a different conclusion. It states that if the mental environment is spot on, but the technical side is even just slightly off,
Then what?
the ability to access and effectively use your skills is also reduced.
So the tandem fails the other way, too.
Exactly. The synthesis requires high quality on both sides. A technical gap seems to put a ceiling on how effective even the best mindset can be. The mindset can't just magic away a fundamental technical flaw.
And the author provides another really specific high-stakes example for this case, too, right? From that World Cup quarterfinal.
Yes, absolutely. A huge match. Australia versus Pakistan in the 2015 World Cup quarterfinal. The author describes being locked in this really intense, fierce battle with a Pakistani fast bowler, a left-armer named Wahab Riaz, who was bowling incredibly quickly and aggressively.
Okay, so high pressure again. Let's establish the mindset first this time. What was the author's mental state like facing Riaz in that specific battle?
According to the author, the mental environment was actually spot on, ideal.
Really? So like the state they described when they were at their best?
Yes, they describe it as being ready for the battle, feeling aggressive in that ready sense, totally locked in, and crucially, trusting instinct. It suggests that the lessons learned from that earlier slump in 2015 had stuck. He wasn't playing with fear, he wasn't premeditating, he had theoretically created the perfect mental state to access his skills.
Okay, so mindset, A+. Yet despite having this optimal mindset, the actual performance in that duel with Riaz was quite problematic. Why? What was the issue?
The issue was an underlying technical weakness in his skill set. The author notes that technically his stance, his setup at the crease, was too closed off to the ball.
Too closed off, what does that mean?
It's a subtle but fundamental flaw in how a batter aligns their body relative to the bowler. Being too closed off basically means your front shoulder and hip might be pointing too much towards the leg side, not open enough towards the bowler. This can make certain types of deliveries very difficult to handle.
Okay, so a specific technical vulnerability.
Exactly. And Wahab Riaz, being a very fast and accurate left-arm bowler, angling the ball into the right-handed author, was able to exploit this flaw ruthlessly. The source says Riaz could jam him up, meaning cram him for room, making it hard to play shots freely. This was especially true with short-pitched balls that were climbing high into the author's left armpit area, precisely targeting the vulnerability created by that closed-off stance.
Ah, so the technical flaw created the specific zone, this Achilles heel that the bowler could attack repeatedly and effectively.
Precisely. And the author highlights this wasn't just about Riaz bowling well, because he contrasts his own struggles with his teammate, Steve Smith, who was facing the same bowler in the same match, but apparently had no problems.
Why did Smith have no problems?
The implication is that Smith's technique, his stance, was not too closed off. It was technically sounder in that specific way, which allowed him to handle that angle and line of attack from Riaz much more effectively, even under extreme pressure.
Wow. That's a really profound illustration of case two, isn't it?
It really is. Because here you have the author, by his own account, in a perfect mental state, aggressive, focused, locked in, trusting instinct, not fearful, not premeditating. Mindset is optimal. Yet, because of that underlying technical deficiency in his skill set,
He was still getting into trouble.
yes, he was struggling. He even admits in the source that he got very lucky during that spell. He mistimed a hook shot badly, hit it high in the air, but fortunately for him, the fielder dropped the catch.
So even the best mindset couldn't save him from the consequences of the technical flaw. It might have kept him fighting, kept him present, but it couldn't magically fix the closed stance.
Exactly. That's the crucial lesson from case two. The best, most focused, most positive mental environment in the world cannot compensate for a fundamental flaw in your technique or your alignment, especially when facing high-level opposition who can exploit it.
It's actually quite a sobering thought, isn't it? It means you can't just mindset your way out of technical problems. The mindset allows you to access and use the skills you do possess to their maximum potential, keeps you in the fight. But it can't invent skills you haven't developed, and it can't fully cover up significant structural weaknesses in your technique when you're truly tested.
That's the reality of high performance, according to this framework. It truly is a synthesis. The most brilliant technical skill set is rendered useless if your mind consistently sabotages access to it. And the most resilient, focused, positive mindset will ultimately be limited in its effectiveness if there are fundamental flaws in the underlying technique being executed. You have to strive for excellence in both. You need to be technically sound and mentally aligned.
Which leads to the conclusion for this section, the need for this constant, ongoing, dynamic awareness in the moment of performance.
Yes, the author stresses that every single moment, every ball in cricket, every interaction in a negotiation, every note in a musical piece requires this dual awareness. You need to be aware of the crucial technical cues.
Yeah.
Am I setting up correctly? Is my technique sound for this specific task?
Oh.
And simultaneously, you need to be actively creating and maintaining the correct mental environment. Am I staying positive? Am I trusting my instincts? Am I avoiding fear and prediction?
It's not about setting it up beforehand and hoping it holds. It's about actively managing both components, moment by moment.
Exactly. It's a transition from just relying on static practice to engaging in this holistic, real-time optimization during performance itself. It's that constant blending of the two components, skill set and mindset, that ultimately allows the best version of you, the performer, to consistently be on display.
So it's like constantly monitoring two dashboards, the technical execution dashboard and the mental environment dashboard.
That's a good way to think about it. And only when both dashboards are showing green technique is sound, mindset is clear, and trusting can you truly expect to achieve peak performance consistently. Hashtag peak tag outro.
Wow. This framework, skill set versus mindset, it really does give us such a useful blueprint, doesn't it? For looking at success and failure in a much more nuanced way than just blaming talent or lack of effort. We've really defined these two critical but separate components.
Yep, we have. First, there's the skill set.
Oh.
That's everything you've developed through all the hard work, the repetition, your technical abilities, your coordination, your knowledge base, your muscle memory. It's the what you can do.
And then there's the mindset, which is the mental environment around that skill set. It's the internal state that determines whether you can actually access and use those skills when you need them.
Exactly. And the main consequence, the big takeaway for everyone listening, has to be this. If that mindset becomes flawed, if it gets corrupted by fear or negativity or And this seems really key from the source by premeditation, by consciously trying to predict or control.
Then your ability to access all those skills you've worked so hard to ingrain gets significantly reduced. You are physically capable, you have the knowledge, but you're essentially psychologically locked out from using it effectively.
It's a barrier.
And you can see how this applies just everywhere, right? If you're, say, learning a complex software system for a big presentation at work, or you're practicing a difficult conversation strategy for managing your team, those are your technical cues. That's building your skill set.
Right, the what and how, technically.
But to actually deliver that presentation smoothly or handle that conversation effectively under pressure, you need to combine that technical preparation with the right mindset. That means probably non-premeditated, flexible, instinctual action based on your prep.
Yeah, trusting the work you've done.
Because the moment you stop trusting that preparation, the moment you start consciously second-guessing yourself or trying to rigidly control exactly how the presentation must go or predict every single thing the other person might say,
You open the door for that failure mechanism, that corruption, to creep in and disrupt your performance.
you move from flow to friction.
That's a great way to put it. And the critical distinction seems to be that shift away from relying on conscious control during performance towards fostering instinctual trust in your automated skills.
Yeah.
Conscious analysis, as we discussed, is just too slow. It interrupts the timing, the flow of skills that need to be automatic.
So when you try to consciously override your muscle memory or your practice responses, especially out of fear or a need to predict, you're fundamentally telling your own system that all those hours of training weren't actually enough and that your conscious brain needs to step in and micromanage. And ironically, it's that very intervention, that lack of trust, that often breaks the whole process.
It's fascinating, but also empowering because the author of this source did manage to fix it, didn't they? They learned about this, redirected their mindset, and got back to performing at their best. Which leaves us with a really practical final thought for you, the listener, to take away and maybe apply to your own challenges. Absolutely. We want you to take a moment, maybe later today or this week, and really consider this framework in your own life. Think about a situation where you need to perform under pressure. First, what does your own ideal mental environment look like in that scenario?
What state allows you to access your best self?
Is it feeling positive? Is it that sense of aggressive readiness we talked about? Is it characterized by just completely trusting your preparation, your instincts, letting go of the outcome? Try to define what good feels like for you internally.
And then the flip side.
Then honestly reflect. What negative element typically gets in your way? Is it usually fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of making a mistake? Or is it more that tendency towards premeditation, constantly overthinking, analyzing, trying to predict every possibility instead of just reacting naturally?
What specific thought patterns or feelings act as your barrier, preventing you from accessing the skills and knowledge, deep down you actually possess?
Because the journey to unlocking more consistent peak performance, as this source suggests, often isn't about desperately trying to learn more skills. Sometimes it starts with simply identifying and then learning how to manage or dismantle the mental barriers you're putting up yourself. It begins with defining and then fiercely protecting your own ideal mental state.
Find out what's currently locking your own door. A powerful thought to end on. That is all the time we have for this deep dive into the essential partnership of skill set and mindset. Thank you so much for bringing this source material to the table.
My pleasure. Really fascinating stuff.
Indeed. We'll catch you all next time.